in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to the first Brand to Global webinar of 2015. Today we have Paige Williams and Michelle Privat Obermeyer from Microsoft talking about Microsoft Global Readiness efforts. And the title of today's presentation is Microsoft Global Readiness, Diverse Cultures, Many Languages, One World. Before I tell you a little bit more about Paige and Michelle, I just want to make a couple of brief announcements. Today's webinar is being recorded. After the webinar today, you'll receive a link either later today or tomorrow that'll allow you to download the recording, and it will also be posted for a while to the Brand to Global website where you can review it after this. It'll be nested under the Brand to Global Insights tab of the Brand to Global website. Again, visit www.brandtoglobal.com. One note on the copyright. Please feel free to, again, review this webinar and share it as you like, but any unauthorized duplication or reproduction is strictly prohibitive without the permission of Brand to Global Conference and Paige and Michelle. I'd like to let you know that currently Brand to Global Conference for 2015, we've announced our dates. They'll be September 29th through October 1st of this year, and we'll be returning to the Doubletree Tower of London Hotel. If you have any questions at all about Brand to Global Conference, please feel free to email me. My name is Alex Burnett, and I am the conference manager for Brand to Global Conference. So thanks again for joining the webinar today. One last note is that it is the early bird period for registration for this year's conference. If you register during the early bird period, you'll receive £300 off of a two-day main conference registration. I would ask that you please save your questions for the end of the webinar today, unless you come up across a situation where you simply don't understand and you need clarification. In order to understand what Paige and Michelle are talking about, go ahead and type a question in the question window. And if I see that, I'll go ahead and politely interrupt them and we can get clarification. But if you can, please save the questions for the end of the presentation, and I'll moderate a Q&A at that time. Today's webinar is 1 hour long. If we do run out of time, feel free to email me and I'll share any further questions or comments that you have with Paige and Michelle. At this time, I'd just like to introduce our speakers today. I'd like to thank Paige Williams and Michelle Privat Obermeyer of Microsoft for joining us today. And there you can see them now. Paige and Michelle presented at Brand to Global Conference last October in London, and we're thrilled to have them helping support Brand to Global. Paige is a director of Global Readiness for Microsoft Corporation, headquartered in Redmond, Washington. She's responsible for managing the company's strategy, policies, and standards for geopolitical, language, and world readiness. With over 20 years of experience in localization and market readiness, Paige and her team help to ensure that Microsoft is respectful and relevant when launching devices, services, and marketing campaigns worldwide. She holds a degree in English from Washington State University. Michelle Privat Obermeyer is a senior global marketing manager for Microsoft Corporation. Michelle's responsibilities include marketing localization strategy, field engagement, and global readiness of digital assets. Her work spans several digital properties, including Microsoft's front door, Microsoft.com. Michelle's undergraduate degree in languages from Colorado College led her to pursue graduate studies in French translation at the Monterey Institute of International Studies. She has over 20 years of experience in localization. Without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Paige and Michelle.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the welcome and the introduction, and we're really happy to be here. Michelle and I have worked together for a very long time, so it's fun for us to also be able to do this together. So as we get started here, I'm going to take a guess that the majority of you, if not all of you, have a mobile device somewhere in your vicinity, on your desk, in your bag. We have ours here. You can probably guess our brand of phone. And, you know, that's an interesting thing to us because 20-ish years ago when I started at Microsoft, there were only 55 million subscribers in the world. And today, there are nearly 1.75 billion. And that's fairly significant. And I did a little fact checking about the webinar here. We have over 60 that registered from nearly 20 countries or locations in the world, from all regions. So that's really interesting to us as well because we think we have one of the more unusual jobs at Microsoft. For a lot of folks who represent the brand at their company, their charter is to really be seen, to get the brands shown and displayed and everywhere. And part of our role is to sort of disappear and to be seeing the cultures, the world around us, and to look deeply into the lives of our customers and to their culture and the spirit of their world, and to understand and then reflect that back into the products and the content, the marketing that we release worldwide. Our job is to really connect and empower people to use our services, our devices, and to appreciate our marketing campaigns. And ultimately, what we look for is a balance between a global and a local market perspective. In a way, we are the bow, the handshake, and the smile of introduction and of a greeting with a customer. And so what we're going to do today is talk to you about the Global Readiness program at Microsoft, what it is, why we built it, and the Center of Excellence that we have here in the company. We're also going to talk a lot about how corporate marketing puts these principles into practice when they vet the local campaigns for both brand and global readiness. The experiences that we've had in these years of doing this work, some of our lessons learned, there have been quite a few, and how we help the company build, localize, and ultimately release meaningful customer experiences worldwide. So with that, I will go ahead and start with the global readiness portion and then hand over to Michelle to go more deeply into the marketing of the online assets. So my father is a rancher. You could call him a real American cowboy. He wears boots and a hat. And a few years ago, he was visiting me at the same time that I was hosting a group of our colleagues from Microsoft offices across South Africa. I planned a day trip for the team out to a small island off the shore of Seattle. And so I thought, why not bring my dad along? He's a great conversationalist. I knew he'd enjoy it. I thought that would be a good thing to do. The island that we went to offers a Native American cultural performance. It has a ferry ride that you take across the sound. You enjoy fresh clams. You have a salmon dinner cooked over alderwood planks, and really a spectacular performance of Native American songs, dance, and storytelling. And as I looked around that group from across both the United States and the world, it struck me how culture travels. And we often speak about going into a culture, but the opposite is also very true. We each carry our language, our traditions, our superstitions, and ultimately our point of view with us. And all of us here in this webinar today are living proof of that. And as evidenced by the number of you who I am guessing held up or touched a mobile device near you at the beginning, we have entered a new era of cultural exchange that literally happens at the speed of touch. On the digital frontier, the world is really borderless. So for Microsoft, as a global brand, what we really need to think about is how do you stay on brand while enabling that local market experience? It really is a balancing act. The Global Readiness team at Microsoft, our charter essentially is to enable the most meaningful customer experiences that we can worldwide. Those experiences need to be culturally appropriate, locally relevant, and they need to be accurate for the language and the market that they're going into. And there are three pillars of the program. One is based on geocultural or geopolitical considerations, making sure that we are being respectful and resonating properly in the different markets worldwide. The other is around internationalization or world readiness, making sure that we're looking after globalization, localizability, in all of the code and content that goes out worldwide. And then the final pillar of the program is really focused on language and the language experiences and language solutions. So let's dive into a few of those. So culture. You know, when I talk about the Global Readiness program, I frame it in the context of these can be the topics of people's passions, really. Your culture can also embody your perspective, your points of view on religion or politics, on, you know, your family, your gender. It can encompass things around color, imagery, representations of people differ from culture to culture. The physical environment you're in, hand gestures, symbolism, and words. Another area that we look at deeply, as I mentioned, is language. I'll give you an example. There was a recipe app for MSN, and the team, of course, they wanted to ship as widely as possible. So they were actually able to be included as a default app in Windows 8. They were looking for 135 languages to be represented. And you know, when you think about an experience such as Bing, you simply cannot just translate the UI. You really need to look more deeply into the context. So it's not just about language. So the initial solution that the team looked at was to source recipes in English from the United States and translate them. However, the loc team, as many of you know who work in the localization business would say, that's really not going to work, because translating from English from a U.S. source, you know, recipes are inherently different. So if you think about a pizza, for example, you're not going to translate a pizza recipe that comes from the United States and have it work worldwide. There's other considerations too, such as, you know, legal considerations. Who owns the translated content? Updates. How would you, manage updates to content as it comes in? So the options they considered, again, were to source from U.S. English and translate. They could source locally from, you know, the different markets and languages that they wanted to represent, or they could source global content that they could then localize. And not any one of those scenarios would be perfect. The recommendation was to identify market-trusted sources and work with them to acquire their content and then build it into the process of traffic, search for the content, and so forth. And in this way, the customers would get up-to-date and locally relevant content. And so those are some considerations. If you look at, for example, the recipes here, I think it's probably pretty clear. There's the pizza example, and there's also, you know, what is a biscuit? A biscuit or a cookie, you know, those would be different depending on which market you're in. So that's a good example of how it's not simply a language issue. It really needs to be about the context and the content locally. Here. Okay, but however, this is sort of an example of, you know, when you get into globalization scenarios, you know, the unexpected can happen as well. So you can see here how, you know, in the context of a recipe, you really don't care about Octomom, in case you know who that is, or Octomum, depending on the location that you're in. So as we've mentioned, there's content and then there's context. Is the content right? Is it in the right context? And is it in the right languages? Can the content change with a changing context? If you look at this example here, I think you could most likely source several or more components that would need to be adjusted in order to match a local market and language experience. You can see it gets quite complex. So for example, what if you have your digital device with you, your mobile phone, and you're, say, from Quebec, Canada, but you're traveling in Japan, and you're seeking a restaurant to go out to dinner in Tokyo? What would you expect to be offered up? You would want your content in French. You would want it in Japanese. You would want it, so you know, you get the picture here. And so, you know, it used to be that the charter of Microsoft was computer on every desktop, but now it's really about a device in every hand. And you really need to think about the expectations that you have and that your customers have for the device in their hand and how it maps to their language and their location experience. When we think about global readiness, it's really where technology meets the world. And so I've talked you through the pillars of the program, the types of things we look out for, and how we do that. But one of the questions we get asked is, how do you do it operationally in a company that's big as Microsoft? I mean, is your team huge? How can you possibly cover everything? How do you know all the topics? We get a lot of questions. And so I thought I would take a minute and describe the model that we have. Clearly, Microsoft is quite a large organization, and our locations are geographically distributed. And so our model is really one based on a core team, which is my team. We sit in the Redmond offices, but our charter is to provide the resources, the tools, the awareness across the company to help the rest of the company understand what are the types of things that may be either sensitive or need to be adjusted to work in different markets worldwide. How do they spot those issues? And to help them with scenarios that don't have a one-size-fits-all answer. And that's a lot of this. It's really kind of thinking about, for example, a hand gesture. What is it intended to convey? Will it be understood across the world? If not, can you adjust it for various local markets to be more appropriate? So we would provide that consultation and help the company with their own issue spotting and how to resolve those. We also do a fair amount of escalation handling, which is, even to the best of your intentions, some things can not go either as planned or, unexpectedly not resonate the way you intended, and so we then need to, manage the response to that. Okay. Vetting content. So we've talked about this, but this gives you sort of a look at some of the things that cross our desk. It's very rarely, if ever, boring, I would say. We get to see a lot of interesting concepts, and that's kind of the key here is when you get it at concept phase, you're able to, provide some good input and perhaps adjust something before it goes out the door. Obviously, it's preferable to, resolve a content concern before a customer sees it and has the wrong experience. So you can see here things that we look out for may include maps, flags, profanity, symbolism, cultural context, and so forth. So if you were to look at these pictures, I wonder what you would find. What kinds of things would you ask questions about? This is what the employees across the company who look for these issues would do. They would look at these photographs and they would perhaps say, okay, I see flowers. Are the flowers symbolic of anything? Are they meant to symbolize something? The colors of the paint that you see there, are those colors in combination reminiscent or symbolic of something? Symbolism is very dynamic, and we see everyday objects such as an umbrella go from being an umbrella to being a symbol of a protest, for example. Colors in combination may look like a flag. And it's not, it's a lot of times it's your unintended audience or your unintended consequence that can be problematic. We also look for hand gestures, as I've mentioned. For a corporate brand, we would look for anything that may be off-brand or potentially conflict with our, with the values that we want to put forth. Representations of people in proximity to each other. So you can see here, there's kind of a lot to look for, and these pictures are fine at the end of the day. So here's an example. Can you spot the issue? you know, holidays are difficult. Obviously, you know, people have different representations of which holidays resonate for them. And holidays can also have, you know, religious connotations. So in this picture, if you spotted the red bag in the background, the fix can be quite simply, because the crescent moon and stars can be unintentionally symbolic. There you go. Just put a few snowflakes on there. Now, this campaign would not necessarily work worldwide because it's not winter in all places of the world at the same time, as we know. Okay. So the changing landscape, you know, for Microsoft and for companies who ship products, you know, we've moved from an in-the-box localization operation to services. You know, when you localize a product and it ships out in a box and it goes into shelves in retail markets, it's really about that single market, single language, or maybe duo language experience. And we have longer ship cycles, and we really can manage that customer experience. When you move into a services world, it's really a borderless world, and devices travel. And so as I mentioned when we were looking at the example of a mobile device, you know, you really have to consider multilingual and multi-geo and multicultural customer experiences and manage to those expectations the best you can. There's also an interdependency between services that's new to look at in consideration of a holistic customer experience. It's not the single item that you're shipping, it's how it interacts with the other services and then the device that those properties or assets are going out on. Also, we're in continuous release. And Michelle will talk more about the web portion of that. And then the last part is really around a customer-driven scenario. So, you know, the customer has their device and they're traveling, and they have a language of origin and perhaps a language or two that they also use in their daily life, and to really try to think about what those scenarios might be. So Michelle and I share in common a long history working on Microsoft.com. I had the first 10 and she's had the last 10. So between us, we've taken care of the international sites for the 20 years. And in fact, last Friday, the folks who have worked on Microsoft.com for 20 years got together, and they really called them, this is an Americanism, but the salad years, which were, you know, the part of their career where we were really all figuring it out together. And I don't think that's really changed because, you know, the web is so dynamic, and understanding, you know, customers' expectations is something you need to continuously be on top of. Michelle will talk more about that. In my first 10 years with this site, we built and launched the international sites. They added a country drop-down list. Today we would call that country region. And we had the Y2K, you know, call it infamous because we were all poised for something very dramatic to happen, and that wasn't necessarily the case. And then we had the 2007 homepage, which I'll leave it to your imagination, when the user comment was, what were they thinking in 2007 with that homepage? So I'm going to sort of wrap my part up here by, you know, we learn by doing, and a lot can happen in the world in 20 years. We just saw the evolution of the homepage, the Microsoft.com sites. But one of the most amazing experiences that I've had in my career was working from the Redmond office during the time that Microsoft was opening our subsidiary in South Africa. And the subsidiary employees actually called me while they were standing in line casting their vote in the elections. And prior to that, along with other companies and organizations, there had been a lot of work to really teach and talk to folks about the voting process and how you would take your pencil and make an X next to the party that you wish to vote for, what that meant. And it was such a powerful experience to represent that part of the world during that monumental change in history. This is a picture of the framed ballot that we were given as gifts for being a part of the region at that time. It was such an amazing time to be connected to culture. And it's really a humbling reminder that there's a world of difference between having an ideal and actually bringing it into being. And we all learn by doing. Putting your mark on something requires courage, and it can mean taking a risk. And so I'm going to hand it over to Michelle to talk about some of the ways that they manage risk and how that requires actually anticipating what those risks may be.
Thank you, Paige. All right. Let's see here.
One character that's quite interesting right now is Jamal.
So as Alex introduced and as Paige said, my name is Michelle Privat Obermeyer, and I'm happy to talk to you about putting those principles that Paige just talked about into practice.
Ladies, I think you have a video playing or something. There's some audio playing.
Let's see. What could that be?
Is there maybe another window open?
Just a minute.
There we go. Seems to be gone now. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Go right ahead. It seems to be fixed now. Go ahead.
So as we saw in the retrospective slide of Microsoft.com from 20 years to now, there has been quite an evolution on the Microsoft.com website, as with, I would expect, many other corporate websites across marketing. And I wanted to talk a little bit about a transformation and evolution that we had over the past 2 years when we decided that we wanted to move to a centralized model for our global homepage. Since it's the front door of Microsoft, we felt it was extremely important to have that global consistency that is something that's possible when you centralize a website. And along with that comes the possibility of a stronger brand alignment with a more cohesive look and feel across the homepage. The homepage exists for Microsoft.com in 98 different markets. So you can imagine that keeping and maintaining and building that brand alignment and that global consistency in a non-centralized model, it was very challenging. So bringing that into a more centralized model allowed us to build on those things. At the same time, we didn't want to fall into the trap of having a centralized homepage that came across as too US-centric. We are a global company, and we wanted to make sure we were putting our best global foot forward. So we adopted what we call the 80-20 model, where 80% of the content you see on the homepage today is what we call global. That is driven and created in the corporate office, and it is meant for global audiences. And then we have 20%, which is locally driven, where each of the subsidiary offices have the opportunity to submit campaigns and promotions that are happening in their local market to give that additional local flavor. The other thing that centralizing our homepage allowed us was the opportunity to be predictable in terms of global campaign launches. In the marketing world, we have many coordinated launches of products or campaigns, and centralizing has allowed us to achieve those simultaneous ship situations. to give you a little bit of a look at our marketing operation process, I'm showing this slide here. And, you know, as I said, I manage the Microsoft.com homepage. Our team also manages the Download Center, the Small and Medium Business Center, and a handful of other digital marketing properties on Microsoft.com. We did create our model based on optimizing for business impact. We want to make sure that the activities we're doing bring us the return on investment that we need to be effective. We wanted to base things on improving our speed to market and our agility, and of course also driving to a quality customer experience. So the global aspect and the global experience is very much a part of all of those three goals, and we have integrated a global focus into the process. So you can see here in our workflow, we integrate globalization or global readiness reviews all throughout the process, from on the left to where we have the content strategy and content development, to reviewing that content, and in the localization process, reviewing localized content and globalizing the marketing campaigns and websites that we create. A big part of why I think we've been successful with this centralization model is that we have built over the years a strong field engagement process. We're very connected and hooked into our subsidiary offices. We have several means and modes of communication with them. Notably, we have a weekly sync call in the morning and in the afternoon to catch time zones around the world, where we go over the current projects and campaigns that are being prepared for launch on the homepage. We let everybody know what's coming, when it's coming, what their action items will be in terms of reviewing localized content, reviewing imagery. And that really allows people to be connected and hooked in, and give us the kind of feedback that if we didn't have this engagement, might come after something is already live. So this allows us to be prepared and be planful about images and copy that's coming onto the homepage. So as I mentioned, we have both a global and a local model when we think about content on the homepage. From a global perspective, something that has been critical to our process is our partnership with the design team. That close partnership has allowed us to ease the burden on localization for imagery. So working with the design team, they can create images that work globally with minimal change, rather than needing to, for example, customize each image for each market, which would be burdensome from a budget perspective. So working closely with the design team, we've been able to get creative with how we present things and reduce the amount of customization needed, but still provide that best global foot forward. We also regularly do, on the other hand, provide choices that account for regional differences and local flavor. So when those moments in time for a particular campaign present themselves where we are able to invest a little bit more, we will provide regional differences. For example, lifestyle imagery will provide some alternate imagery for different regions of the world. Not everybody has the melting pot concept of people that we have in the United States, so we try to be respectful of that. We also, as part of our Global Readiness charter, we do review all imagery that is going on the homepage to make sure that it is respectful and that it meets the bar from a global readiness perspective. On a local level, if a subsidiary has a campaign that they want to promote on the homepage, they submit their imagery and their concept. That all of that gets reviewed and approved from a corporate level. We engage with a feedback loop with the local market designers. We do share our guidelines and resources and tips that we've learned in terms of creating imagery so that we can help raise the bar and bring that brand cohesiveness to any imagery that's on the homepage. And the nice thing is that over the last couple of years that we've been doing this, we've seen that our feedback loops have become much more efficient as the teams have learned what the guidance is. So I wanted to give an example here of how our picture is global and what that means from a global perspective on the homepage. It's true even more now than ever. In this example, this project was around the launch of Windows 8, and we were running a short animated feature on the homepage, and we used as a base some video that was created for the Windows 8 launch. It was a 5-minute video, and so we were pulling segments from that video to put on our 10 or 11-second video on the homepage. So as the design team was building this animated feature, I was right there along with them looking at different sequences and trying to find what would be appropriate for our global audiences. So, for example, if you look down here in the right-hand corner, we had in the video sequence of a bunch of friends meeting at the swimming hole to go swimming. We had several sequences with people in bathing suits showing lots of skin. We chose for our global audiences to remove that type of imagery from our sequence, and we felt we could safely do that without taking away from the message that we wanted to convey. We also found some instances of hand gestures in the video that wouldn't maybe work appropriately in all the markets that we were launching in, so we removed those. We also wanted to remove other products that might not be, or features that might not be available in all markets. So we removed mention of, we removed some complexity by removing maps, which can create additional cost and challenge during the localization process. We also wanted to be flexible. We wanted to be able to promote and provide that global look in the imagery. So we were able to work with partners across the company to provide localized start screens in the animated feature and customize to the level of persona. So in the bottom left, you see Cesar Garcia was in the US image, and we were able to alter that for France and other French-speaking markets to the profile that's for that, Frank de la Salle. Over here in the start screen on the right, we were also able to customize the tiles for local market weather concerns to give a little bit of that local flavor. So we spent some time during the development process trying to get this right, and right before we were about to launch, we realized, okay, we've spent this time on here looking for potential risk issues, and it looks like we've missed one. The one that we missed right and noticed right at the end was that we had a sequence right at the end that showed someone diving into the water, and we see the bottom of their feet. Oops. Okay, so the bottom of the feet in some cultures in the world is very, very offensive. So we were able to make the adjustment at the last minute and remove that sequence from the animated feature. And I guess the point to me is that because we were thinking about this kind of thing ahead of time and planning and looking for it, first of all, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to catch everything, because there are subtle things that are easy to miss, and it takes some time and space to really see all the potential risk in an image. But having that system and that process in place does allow for teams to reduce risk and provide that culturally appropriate vision for all markets. So in the end, the animated feature was very actually successful. We had very positive results. We had a much higher initial response rate on this international feature over a 10-day period than we normally would for others. So we felt like there was a good uptake. So moving on, I talked about how we look at things from a global perspective. I also wanted to just give you some examples of local submissions that we might see. This is an example of a Japanese conference. They submitted the campaign assets and the business justification. We reviewed the content, and we approved it for placement on the homepage. So, and here is another example of a local campaign submitted by Poland, which was about some game apps for Windows. So we have a wide variety of local campaigns that are presented on the homepage, depending on what each subsidiary is doing and promoting in their own market. So talking a little bit about brand review, which I haven't spent too much time on. Brand, as you know, is a lot more than just the logo that a company presents. It's more than one logo or multiple logos. It's really about that cohesive look and feel that you want to engender in your customers. So the things that go into that are everything from using the right logo, of course, according to the appropriate guidelines, but also color. Following the defined color palette for the company and shifting as that morphs and changes over time. Using the right font family and the proper copy style to bring customers in and bring them into the Microsoft look and feel. So that's the same thing that goes with photography and illustration guidelines. We have resources that are built up through our brand team about how we want to present our products and people using our products at Microsoft. And these are the kinds of things that we are reviewing for when we're looking at our local campaigns that come in, so that we can build that cohesive look and strengthen the Microsoft brand rather than degrade it. So as we come close here to the end, I wanted to show an example, a mock review of a image for the homepage, and give you another idea of how we approach this. This is an example of something that could potentially be submitted to our review. And looking at it, there are a few things that I would look at from a global readiness perspective. You may have seen them, you may not. We have, over here in the left, we have the picture of, in the background, very hard to see, but still there, the bottom of a foot with a tattoo on it. We have here in the middle top the silhouette of a woman in a provocative pose. Then down here next to the little boy's face, we have what looks like possibly a man pointing a gun, and the gun is actually pointed at the little boy. So none of these images are the focal point of this campaign. And so they don't add any value. And in this case, they could be one of those things that decrease value from this campaign if somebody is offended by them or calls them out and makes a big deal on social media. So this is the kind of risk that we're looking for in imagery. There's no reason for those images to be on there, and so this would be something we would recommend to remove from the image. It doesn't take away from the overall look and feel. The second thing is, because we have a responsive website, we want to make sure that the focus of the image is within what we call the safe zone or the safe frame. As we are all using multiple devices nowadays, from the phone to a laptop to a desktop, we want to be able to ensure that the imagery looks as good on a big screen as it does on a small screen. So we're looking to make sure that, for example, that the little boy's face would not be cut off on a mobile phone. We're also noticing in this image that the color combination of the red text on the green background is not accessible. We want to make sure that we're making our imagery and our copy accessible to people of all abilities. So here's how we might adjust that campaign image to be more representative of the brand and global readiness guidelines at Microsoft. You can see that the copy is much more readable, and the image has shifted into the safe frame. The background images are gone. And taking it just a step further, we can see that these people are in no way engaging with a Microsoft product. So pushing the envelope a little bit further, we might give the feedback to the local market that they should integrate a product. Perhaps this is a campaign about a phone, and show the individuals interacting with our products. So that's an example of the kind of reviews we do on the marketing side for Microsoft.com. And I have a couple other examples here, but I'm conscious of time. I think actually we could probably do one more, or maybe both of them. So here we have, again, another image, and you see some of the same things that we looked at before. Here's a new one. It's against our brand guidelines to show the Microsoft color logo on a color background. It takes away from the brand itself. It's not as visible and recognizable that way, so that's something we steer clear of at Microsoft. The color combination is not accessible. Here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that an old Windows XP logo is showing. We want to be current in our imagery and our photography, so we would adjust that. And then you can barely see here, but the gentleman has an earring, and you know, that might not be acceptable in some cultures. Recently, I think it was the world's most pierced man, who was a performer in a sideshow, wasn't allowed into Dubai because of his multiple piercings. So we see that cultural norms and fashion vary by market, and we need to be respectful for that. Again, the safe frame that we've talked about. And a comment here, so it's not so much with this image we have multiple choices. We could actually provide alternate imagery for some of the markets to address this. We could show him from a different angle, or we could just choose a different image entirely. So we have options. Here again are some of the same kinds of things. We have an older version of the Windows Start screen that we would remove. And so that gives you a look at the kind of work that we're doing. So thinking about what we've talked through today, it occurred to me that we're able to do the big picture of what we do by taking those small and detailed steps along the way. And so this quote really resonated with me. Great things are done by a series of small things brought together. It takes a village, of course, to create the marketing campaigns and the products that we do at Microsoft, as within your corporations, I'm sure. It is a series of small things that help us bring together a greater whole.
Very true. So we leave you with sort of the final thought about the Global Readiness program at Microsoft, which is really when my team and those of us that we partner with across the company that do this work think about have we been successful or not, at the end of the day, it's really that the customer experiences Microsoft products, services, devices, websites, campaigns, and says, wow, Microsoft knows me. They've taken the time to understand my culture, my sensibilities, my language or languages, and they've gotten it right. And so we leave you with this, and feel free to engage with us. We have several blogs that have been going up and plan to do more. We have International Mother Language Day coming up soon, so you'll see some content from us around that and some interesting, exciting launches with respect to language. And thank you very much for your time, and we really appreciate this opportunity.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for a very insightful and fascinating presentation, Paige and Michelle. I really appreciate you taking the time. We started a little bit late, so if you're okay with it, there are about 4 questions that are, do you have time to answer these questions before we go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So our first question comes from Rebecca, and she's curious, actually, this is a clarification from earlier in the presentation. I think this was back when you were talking, Paige. She's wondering on the slide that you had with the pizza recipe, is there a reason that part of that page was in English and part of it was in Italian? I guess we might have
That's a great question. To answer it with 100% accuracy, I would need to talk to the MSN team about that particular example. It also could be a mixture, a combination of content sourcing and being in both English and that example is probably in Italian.
Great.
But that would be exactly one of the things we'd be looking for.
Okay. Our next question comes from Brianna, and she's wondering, with a global brand, do you find it more effective to have separate messages across all channels for English-speaking markets, or the same one, even though culturally they're different?
Across different English markets, is that the question?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So we do sometimes have different messages across our global English markets. And we do localize into British English. So depending on the campaign, we might take a variety of different approaches. But we are definitely looking at that language customization opportunities in order to give that local flavor.
Okay. Our final question comes from Rezan, and they were wondering, I want to ask if another version of the guidelines must be designed or recommended to be designed locally with the choices of a local font family, etc., or from an adapted visual brand identity manual of some kind?
There are a series of brand guidelines at Microsoft, and yes, definitely we do take into consideration local font families and needs in those guidelines. So there is room for that kind of local presence in our brand guidelines, certainly.
Great. I think I see the one other question is just wondering if the slides will be shared. And again, we recorded the webinar here today. after we conclude here, I'll go ahead and process the recording, and I'll get it posted to the Brand to Global Insights page of our website, and I'll also send each of you a link, so you'll be able to review the slides and hear the presentation again if you missed anything. Again, please do not duplicate or share this for any commercial purposes. And I guess with that, do you want to say anything else, ladies?
Thank you for the opportunity today, and thank you for participating and joining the conference.
Great, and I just want to thank Paige and Michelle again very much for doing this first Brand to Global webinar of 2015. Details on our next webinar will be posted soon to the Brand to Global website. So with that, I think we'll conclude. Thank you very much.